Hello and welcome along to episode 307 of the Total Saints podcast. It's your home for all things Southampton Football Club. A huge thank you to our TSP Patreon community because we couldn't make the show each week without your loyal support. And welcome along to Harold CD, who's joined our Bobby Stokes tier on Patreon. So thank you for that. We're live streaming this episode, as always, on Facebook, X, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube as well. So make sure you get involved in the comments if you're watching along live. It's going to be a busy one tonight. Coming up this week on the podcast, Ivan Juric gets his first win as Saints manager, 2-1, the final score at Portman Road. We did a win, everybody, and we are all delighted about it. There's going to be a slightly different tone to the podcast tonight, I think. And it's a break from the Premier League this weekend as Saints host Burnley in the FA Cup. So we will preview that one with Joe from the Turfcast podcast. And of course, with the transfer deadline closing tomorrow, we will get the very latest on what to expect. Is it going to be a busy day or a quiet one? My name is Martin Starke, and joining me this week are Steve Grant, who is the owner of Saints Web. Alfie House is senior Southampton reporter at the Daily Echo, and Glen is writer of the blog League One -10. So Steve G got in touch on X yesterday and said, "What the hell are you lot going to talk about for an hour now? I'm expecting stunned silence with nothing but smiles on your faces." Kind of sums it up, really. I mean, we won a game. Steve, it wasn't pretty, but we won a game, and you were there.
Yeah, a win is a win is a win at the end of the day, isn't it? It doesn't kind of matter how it comes about. It was, I mean, good God, that was a terrible game of football. Both teams were absolutely dreadful for the vast majority of that, but I think that kind of suited us in many ways because Ipswich knew they had to win. That was a game that they would have had circled on the calendar for a long time, building up to it as, right, this is 3 points. This is where we get our potential survival bid back on track after obviously getting their asses handed to them by City, Liverpool, Newcastle, sides like that in recent weeks. And frankly, they didn't really do a lot. I think the situation, I think the kind of expectation of just rolling us over, I just don't think they really knew what to do. And we were for probably the first 25 minutes, half an hour, we were relatively comfortable, and took the lead with, I think it was our first shot on or off target. I mean, we spoke last week, didn't we, about how bad Muric has been for Ipswich, and he'd lost his place in the team. And Christian Walton got injured either last week or during training this week, and Muric is back in the team. And 25 minutes in, somehow he's let one through his hands for Aribo to give us the lead, which was nice of him. And then, I mean, we kind of let them run through the middle of us a little bit for about 10. There was a 10-minute spell there where Liam Delap just bullied the hell out of Bednarek, and we let him and Enciso just run right through the centre, and Broadhead as well. And it was, we were a little bit fortunate that Ipswich only managed to score once, I think, in that little spell. But then once we got over that, we were kind of keeping them at arm's length. It was just a turgid game of football that wasn't really going anywhere. They had a lot of the ball, but a lot like game. There were a few games that we had last season where we struggled to break down sort of teams who played a low block and were quite happy to defend and try and play on the break. And I think Ipswich kind of felt probably that was the situation they were in, because we were sat fairly deep. The only outlet was lumping it into the sky and hoping that Onuachu could do something miraculous with it, which for the most part he couldn't, because nobody was within 20 yards of him for even if he did win anything. That was kind of the only frustrating thing, really, that as an attacking outlet we didn't really do an awful lot against a side who are as bad defensively as we are, really. But we kept him at arm's length. I think Ramsdale's only really had probably one good save to make in the first half, and then one at his feet, which you would expect him to make in the second. And then obviously the substitutions for once changed the game in our favour. Because suddenly Sulemana our left flank, is pushing Tuanzebe back. It means that he's ended as an attacking force. And suddenly they've got something to think about at the other end. And obviously it's Suleimana who cuts in and hits the shot at the near post. Actually, it's a really good save by Muric, and he's a little bit unlucky that Onuachu's just the quickest to react. I mean, Tall Paul looked absolutely knackered, like 65, 70 minutes into that game. You just thought, well, surely Juric is probably going to bring Adam Armstrong on just for fresh legs, if nothing else. But he kept him on, and obviously it's paid off because he managed to find that little bit of energy to react quicker than Greaves, I think it was, that he was alongside, and pokes it in, and some fine limbs. I've got a little bit of a cut on my shin from
the shins,
whacking the seat in front of me.
Well, having left early before, you were finally in the stadium when Tall Paul scored.
Yes, I've seen the goal that he scored, and of course it actually mattered. It was still very much a live game at that point. So that was good fun. I mean, speaking to a mate of mine who's a Ipswich season ticket holder afterwards, I mean, he basically just said, "I'm just done with football for the season. It's just grim." And I mean, we can all fully kind of appreciate the position he's coming from, because that's what we've been saying for the last 3, 4, 5 months, isn't it? It's when you're down there and you're not getting results, even against teams you think that you should be able to beat. It's really grim, and it's not fun for anybody. And you kind of think, well, why did we go to all that effort last season to be good, only to then come up and find ourselves getting turned over every week? It's not fun, but that is the game these days, unfortunately.
Well, it looks like we'll be playing them again next season anyway. Alfie, you'd written this week about how it was kind of a key game, just for sort of self-belief, really, wasn't it? And confidence, and obviously the manager wanting to get a win. How did it all play out for you? Steve said it wasn't an enjoyable game, but we got the win.
Yeah, I think the sort of the main point in the article I was sort of trying to make was that I felt it was an important week, just in the sense of the manager obviously wants to be here next season. The club want the managers to be here next season, so they say. And to do that, you need a bit of buy-in from the players, and you only really get, and from the fans as well. You only really get that if you get results. Excuse me, I've just had my dinner. I'm trying to choke to death to it. You might have seen I've been coughing a few times.
Is it nice?
It was nice, but I don't want it anymore. I'm finished with it now. I'm still up. It wasn't an amazing game. I must admit, for the first half, I was really worried, actually. For the first sort of 20 minutes, particularly. Tactically, this was the most sort of aggressive man-to-man I felt we'd seen. I know Steve pointed out in a game quite recently, but I felt that they really went for it this time.
The other one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they've had a few more weeks on the training ground now, so maybe they feel a bit more confident with it. But Kieran McKenna clearly prepared for that as well, because, I mean, Nathan Broadhead on the left, I mean, he missed all of his chances, thankfully. But he was dragging players like James Bree and a little bit of Jan Bednarek with Liam Delapozel all over the pitch. And, you see that with the goal as well, the fact that the three centre-backs are in a vertical line up the pitch, basically, because they're just following their man. And I was a bit worried about it, and they looked quicker, they looked sharper. But what they did do is Saints hung in there, and they got a really important result. And Steve mentioned the limbs. From where I was sat, like directly opposite it, the limbs were amazing. I'm so jealous to be so far away from it. But it's an important result for me in terms of just that bit of buy-in, that bit of belief. And look, I mean, they're still 7 or 8 points off. So I don't know how much it changes in terms of the table. But I've said all sort of season that I didn't think the Derby record was going to be broken, because eventually 11v11, you're going to win a game of football. And if you're going to win a game, Ipswich away was the one to do it, because they were low on confidence. They're almost as bad as Southampton. So yeah, they did all right.
They will be panicking on the streets of Derby, though, won't they?
Well, they must. I think they've got to accept now that I feel confident that some of them we're going to surpass that now. I know there's not too many of those sort of winnable games left in theory, but I think that they are improving a little bit.
Draws, even get 3 draws.
Exactly. Yeah, they are improving, and I was pleased with the way they hung in there, and obviously for Paul to get that moment, really good. But yeah, some interesting decisions. I mean, I did not expect Joe Rebo to be playing left centre back for the last 35 minutes of the game. I mean, I really did not expect that.
Mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing, yeah. It's mind-blowing. I mean, even if you had to put one of those midfielders back there, Leslie would have been my first thought. It wouldn't have been Joe. But credit to him, he scored the goal in the first half. He did pretty good, exactly. He did his job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ivan can come out of that with some credit, I guess, because if you make a big decision and it goes well, then you get it. But I mean, I asked him about Amo-Ameyaw, obviously, who's on the bench. Nathan Wood's injured. Jack Stevens obviously went off. Taylor went off with a bit of an injury as well. But I asked about Bella-Kotchap, and he just said his reason was I see him as a central centre back or on the right, not on the left. But I don't know. It just I'm sure he's not really. He's quite an honest person, but I don't know. That just feels a bit. Not sure.
Well, Paul in New Zealand emailed about that. He said, a win at last, but what is the point of Bella-Kotchap being on the bench if you don't bring him on when you have two centre-backs that are injured? So, I mean, we've kind of addressed that. But yeah, I honestly, I felt the same as you. If it wasn't that excuse, then maybe it'd be why he doesn't like playing away games. He just wants to play home games. He doesn't suit the yellow kit. He's better at home. There always seems to be some reason for him not coming on. And I wonder when we get onto the FA Cup game, whether we might see him get some minutes at the weekend. But yeah, who knows? Glen, it was our first Premier League away win in 20 games, almost 2 years. Obviously, still last on Match of the Day, which tells you all you need to know about that game. Yeah. But what are you going to be taking away from this?
I think just the fact that we hung in there, and we got the job done. It was two poor sides. Let's be honest about that. They're bottom. Us and them. We're the bottom two teams in the league for a reason, and you can kind of see it. But I thought we looked, reasonably competent, which doesn't sound like much of a compliment. But we looked okay. We haven't looked okay. We haven't looked like a functioning team in many games this season, and I thought yesterday we did. I mean, there's always, you go back through any season, there's always games where both teams are kind of rubbish, and the team that sort of toughs it out more tends to, or just has that little bit of quality. I mean, the difference for us was Sulemana coming on, as Steve said. Twanzebe, I think, I've always thought he was poor defensively, but he was having a relatively decent game because no one was putting him under pressure. And all of a sudden, he's got Sulemana against him. And again, I've got to praise Sulemana for he's got one thing he does, and he hasn't done it for 2 years while he's been with us. He just gets the ball and runs at the defenders, and they are terrified of him. And as long as he can keep doing that, so the goal came from him running at Twanzebe and Morsey, neither of whom looked remotely comfortable. And yeah, it's an interesting thing on Muric on the second goal. I think, yes, it was a half decent save because he'd moved too far towards the middle of his goal. He had to dive back towards the near post to stop it, and I just think he left himself positionally. I just thought, yeah, he's a couple of feet too far towards the middle of the goal, and pushing it sort of straight back out. So no, it was good stuff. There was some mad stuff in there. I mean, the structure. The defensive structure. I mean, I think it was Alfie touched on it about we're going man for man at certain times. So when Joe Aribo did go back to left-sided centre back, you're kind of expecting him to be in that channel, and then he turns up on the right, and I don't know where James Bree is, and Bednarek's kind of in midfield, and you just think, what on earth are they doing here? But if you're going man for man, then there are inevitably going to be times where you do get dragged into areas that are not necessarily your channel. But so that it looked a bit hairy at times at the back.
Yeah, it's not something we've seen much of that, have we? I don't think
it's not something we tend to do in England. In British, English teams don't tend to
more like the zonal stuff,
play that way. Yeah, you tend to stay in your channel and pick up whatever player comes into it. But yeah, I mean, obviously some teams go man for man on set pieces and things like that, but even that's become less fashionable these days, isn't it? Now it's teams tend to be sort of like zonal with blockers and stuff at set pieces. So yeah, there's Juric is bringing some interesting sort of like things to the party. I'm be interested to see how it works sort of like going forward when teams realise that we are going to do that, because I think we're possibly taking teams by surprise a little bit with the way we're defending. I think it suits our guys more to be aggressive in their defending and be sort of like right up behind the strikers. But yeah, you mentioned Taylor Harwood-Bellis. He was shocking yesterday from the first minute. He I can't stand it when players start moaning at their teammates to cover up for their mistakes. So in the first couple of minutes, he passed the ball straight out of play and had a go at the player who was nearest to the imaginary player he tried to pass to, which happened to be Wellington, who was making his debut. And it's like, he doesn't need that in the first couple of minutes from a player who's been here for a year and a half, plays for England and all that stuff. And he just carried on with that. He pinged a horrible pass into Joe Aribo when it was a real hospital job, where he had two players behind him and he couldn't control it. And he was waving his arms around and stuff like that. And when he went down on 44 minutes, I thought, he went down. It's the classic, no one near him. And Taylor Harwood-Bellis, I've always thought he's got an excellent attitude usually. And I just looked at that and thought, he don't fancy it today. And it was no surprise to me whatsoever that he went off at half time.
I think for me, it was like shades of the first few weeks of the season, Glenn, where you could sort of see that he was tapped into the Premier League. But I mean, as a character, he for the interest of transparency, I described him as something along the lines of a hothead or something in our chat. Just in the sense that he does seem to sort of lose his head in moments, and like you say, whether that's with himself a lot of the time, with mistakes he's made or whatever it is. But that same sort of passion, I suppose, is probably what has driven him to this point as a player, and as the reason he's a professional.
But
he's really into it, but he's got to manage it.
But that's fine. But don't have a go at your teammates if you've made a mistake. That's terrific, because that just does no good to anybody. It just winds me up. Can't imagine his future father-in-law would be very impressed with that kind of behaviour.
That's part of the reason why I was a bit worried in that first half, because he wasn't the only one. I think Leslie put a couple of balls out of play for no reason as well. I was thinking it's a little bit sloppy
off the pace.
Yeah, he got better second half.
Yes, I mean, for most of the individuals, it was generally a case of they were either decent in the first half or decent in the second half. I thought Graham looked quite lively first 20 minutes. Had a couple of shots from the edge of the area that were blocked. Both of them looked on target. So at least he's a guy that's willing to take a shot from outside the box. So that's always a positive. Other than that, wasn't involved a huge amount. But we didn't really see an awful lot of the ball first half, really, other than kind of passing it around the back and sort of through the first stages of midfield. Wellington, I thought, looked excellent.
It was really good.
I mean, it did. I assume it was only cramp that saw him taken off with about 15 minutes to go. He stretched into a tackle, and it was just one of those ones where you could tell he hit the deck after the tackle and he wasn't getting up. You could just tell it was like all the air left his body in one go. It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Maybe a little bit lucky he did it then, really, because I mean, Tyler Dibbling was stripped ready to go as the fifth substitute, about to come on the touchline. I mean, had he done it a minute later, we could have been playing with a Wellington with one leg for the rest of the game, basically. I
mean, the substitution we've touched on it. The putting Aribo back in defence. It was strange because, I mean, I don't understand Will Smallbone. I don't understand his role in a Premier League team. I really don't, because he doesn't get tackles in. He doesn't get about the park to put pressure on players. When the opposition have got the ball, he's kind of a passenger. When we've got the ball, he only gets it when someone gives it to him simple, sort of thing. So I didn't understand that substitution. We kind of got away with it because Aribo adapted really well. And the other substitution that did work really well was bringing Lallana on for the last 10 minutes, which is exactly what we signed him for. To
boss
play
the game.
The last 10, 15 minutes and see out games or whatever it is that we needed to do. And it was just remarkable noticing the amount of sort of like jockeying of other players, getting them to move up the pitch. If you look at the second goal again, I mean, obviously we're probably not thinking in terms of getting another goal, but he's moving everybody up the pitch, and
he's the other guy in the box at the time.
Yeah, but he just looked, obviously he's class, but his legs are gone, and he can't play for very, very, very much these days. But that is exactly how we should be using him, and that was a noticeable little thing at the end of the game, because on the end of the day, I didn't understand taking Leslie off at that stage, bearing in mind he's the sort of like big, strong guy in midfield. And we've ended up with a central midfield of Lallana and Smallbone. And, to me, on paper, that's terrifying.
Yeah, terrible,
but
yeah.
we kind of got away with it, I feel. But I don't think that will work very often, to be honest.
Part of the reason that did work was because Ipswich took off Kajust in midfield, who, by the sound of it, basically only ever plays 60 to 70 minutes. And nobody can quite fathom why he's not at least why they're not trying to get him to play more of the game, because he seems to be really important to the way that they play him. I mean, we know that Morsey's an old workhorse who just kind of sits there, doesn't really move around an awful lot. So that he can probably do 90 minutes, but he's not mobile. Whereas Kajust is the guy that's a little bit more dynamic. And they didn't bring Calvin Phillips on, which I found, I mean, if you're not going to, I mean, you've got a guy that you're paying 70 grand a week to, who's their highest paid player, and not even getting minutes in a game like this is madness.
It's not working out for him, is it? Just want to get your thoughts on the injuries, Alfie, just so where we're at. You've got a feel for Jack Stevens, obviously coming on and then having to go straight off again. Harwood-Bellis, I think we mentioned, going off at half-time as well. So there's a few concerns there maybe going forward.
Yeah, Harwood-Bellis, I think the verdict was an ankle injury of some sort, but I don't know how severe that is. I don't know if it's a case of he'll be back next week or not. I'm not sure. Jack, they're obviously... Well, yeah. They're obviously... They're obviously worried about Jack because it's a continuation, I guess, of what's kept them out since sort of mid-December, and not the red cards, the injury that he suffered in training. I get the impression that he was rushed back a little bit, in the sense that Ivan Juric said before the game that he's done 2 training sessions and he'd come through them well, and this isn't normal. I'm really impressed with Jack, all this kind of thing. So then be on the bench, and obviously the intention wasn't for him to do 45 minutes. Presumably it was only when Taylor required to come off. The fact he's only lasted 10, you've got to feel for him. I know that obviously he's got his critics and whatnot. And who else went off? I mean, obviously Cameron Archer wasn't in the squad at all. He has got a bit of a groin injury. Obviously, Leeds United want to sign him. As far as I understand it, nothing's progressed. Certainly as of this morning, Saints have rejected whatever has come in for him. But I mean, there's a very real possibility that they spend the money and they get him. Who knows? But I think his absence was genuine. And Flynn Downs is a little bit interesting, isn't it? Based on what Ivan Juric said after the match.
Wow. So before the match, we thought he might have been injured because he missed a couple of sessions. But
no, they never said that he missed sessions for injury. They just said he missed a couple of sessions. Cam Archer missed a couple of sessions for injury. Flynn Downs missed a couple of sessions for an undescribed reason, not given reason. And then Ivan Juric, after the match, was asked about him. He said exactly that. He missed a couple of sessions and today did not play. And then we had some problems in the week. And then someone said, "Oh, some problems," and he went, "I think I've said enough." So you can do with that what you will.
Interesting. I've got absolutely no idea what that may or may not be.
Look, the obvious reading between the lines is that he hasn't played much, has he, since Ivan's come in? He's had a couple of games where he's done well, had a couple of games where he hasn't done so well.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was a Russell Martin signing, so who knows? Maybe there's obviously
conversations going on.
Yeah, there's a day left of the window. I think that I think the club are pretty confident that he'll still be here. But just maybe while that window's not shut, maybe it's a bit different.
Interesting. We need to do player of the week and stuff. Anything else on Ipswich? Anything else that we've missed, Steve, from the game?
No, I can't think. Not that I could think of. No, I mean, slight concern of how sort of badly Bednarek got beaten up basically by a teenager. For the vast majority of that 90 minutes.
That was always going to be one of the key battles, wasn't it? What was going to happen?
We rather got away with it.
He's a big kid, though, isn't he, Steve? He might be 21, but huge.
He is, but I mean, given that he was utterly anonymous in the reverse game at St Mary's, the difference is palpable, and that was slightly concerning. But and obviously at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's interesting from the way we're defending. That's right. We're going for this man-to-man thing, basically. So Bednarek is up against him the whole game. Whereas in the normal scenario, if you've got a centre forward, then then what? One goes up close and one goes behind, and the centre forward might, unless his touch is spot on or the ball up to him is spot on, then he's going to have a problem because he'll be playing against two players. When you're basically going 1v1, I think there's more scope for the centre back to get battered around like that. Bednar, did he get booked in the end? He was very fortunate. There was an advantage played after Bednarek had absolutely hammered him. I thought he did okay. There was one horrible bit of defending by Bednarek at the end of the first half, where obviously there was a lack of communication between him and Ramsdale, where he ended up sort of like just plopping the ball down on the edge of the 6-yard box, and we got away with it. Someone got a boot to it, but yeah, it was. I think if you go 1-to-1 all over the defence, then there are going to be more hairy moments than there are when you obviously outnumber and cover and stuff like that. But that's the way the manager wants to do it, so we'll have to get used to it.
Let's do player of the week then. Fernandez won last week. That's the 4th time for him. I think that's the most, maybe him and Dibbling at the moment, but that was the 4th time for him this season. Who are we going to kick off with, Glenn? Are you going to put Joe Aribo forward first?
Yeah, I'd say. I thought he was our best midfielder when he was there.
Didn't matter, going forward, defending in midfield. He
scored the goal. He was our best midfielder,
and
he was probably our best defender when he went back there as well. And I love the little action right at the end of the game where it's 97 minutes and you're all waiting for the inevitable ball into the box, and he's like a lunatic up the left wing, winning 2 tackles and then getting fouled, and then the final whistle goes. And I kind of think that was his game yesterday. I thought he had a really good game. I mean, I question him starting virtually every week because he can be a little bit up. He can be a little bit up and down, can't he? But he's having more good. He's having more good games than bad ones at the moment.
Definitely.
And in the context of this season, that's not bad. And I mean,
is he top scorer in the league now?
He is.
Yeah, he is.
That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
I mean, Flynn Downs is it will be coming for his place in the team, you would have thought, but at the moment it's certainly not a foregone conclusion that he'll take it off him. So yeah, I'd say Joe Aribo, and he won't be top scorer this season. Tor Paul will get about 15. You watch.
Well, yeah. Any other nominations, Steve? Alfie, player of the week. Who else stood out for you?
Yeah, I'm gonna throw Wellington into the mix.
Okay.
Just a bit of. Obviously, we've now got proper balance there. I mean, Ryan Manning, as I've said a fair few times on here over the last couple of months, has exceeded the very low expectations that pretty much everybody had of him. But you can see the huge difference in when you've got somebody with a bit more sort of top level quality and nous about them. And Wellington certainly has that. He's obviously quick, gets down the wing, and the thing that was absolutely fascinating was his absolute determination to swing across into the box at the first time of asking. Didn't ever want to get closer to the penalty area. He was quite happy swinging across into the box from 40 yards back or 15, 20. Didn't matter. The ball was going into the box, which, I mean, given that there was only ever one player in there at the time, isn't ideal in a game like today. You probably want a few more targets in there, but
small steps, right? Small steps.
Yeah, absolutely. but also the way that those balls were delivered, they were delivered with pace and sort of dip on them, and those are the ones that are difficult to defend against. And if you can just kind of get the accuracy a little bit more improved, then yeah, that's going to be a huge weapon for us, I think.
So we do Wellington, Aribo, and Alfie gone.
Yeah, well, just on Wellington as well. I mean, I watched him play 45 minutes for the 21s 2 weeks ago, and you don't see a lot about a player in 45 minutes for the 21s for obvious reasons. But one of the things that I did see quite clearly was he loves getting stuck into tackles, and he doesn't shirk them. He stays in them and he gets into them. And I was just wondering, is it a case of he's just bullying children here, or will he bring that into the Premier League? And he really did. He really did. One bad tackle he got booked for, to be fair. But yeah, I was actually really impressed by that side of the game as well as what Steve was mentioning going forward.
Did you see Omari Hutchison much? He put like one cross in. Wellington. He ran at Wellington twice in the first sort of 5 minutes. Both times block tackle, come away with the ball, get out of here. And I was impressed with his defending and the going forward stuff. Once he's been here a while, if it's Amo-Ameyaw up front, he'll get used to Wellington and when he wants to deliver the ball. And as a player who's obviously going to thrive off crosses, that's only going to improve. And you can see Wellington playing every game from here on in. There's no way if he can keep to that level. Obviously, might be fitness issues while he gets used to the Premier League, but he will stay in the team. And those relationships with the players around him, and in particularly the forwards coming in from the other side, will only improve.
We should probably put Amo-Ameyaw on the poll as well, really.
Yeah, the only other players I was going to say is Paul for the goal, I guess. Even though, I mean, I think every single first touch he took in the first half went about 10 yards away from him. But also Ramsdale made maybe one or two big saves as well. It's probably worth chucking him in.
There we go.
There was a particular good one, a double save on, might have been Broadhead at the near post in the first half.
Ramsdale for the knee slide, because we haven't seen one of those for a while.
Did he injure himself doing that, by the way? Because he was struggling with his hip for the rest of the game.
I didn't see that, mate.
He went tumbling over. But
amazing. And Amo-Ameyaw, because he scored the winner away from home, and we've not been able to say that for ages and ages. 5 people got the correct score for the Ipswich game in our predictions league. So plenty of movement on the Patreon leaderboards. Less so on our panel leaderboard, but enough said about that. We have a week off for the Cup. So before we get into the Cup preview, which we're doing just a moment, the YouTube community continues to grow like crazy. We're not absolutely sure where it's all come from, but thank you so much for all the support over the last few weeks. It's completely blown us away, to be honest. We're just about to cross over, I think it's 17,000 subscribers now, which is pretty wild for us, really. So if you haven't already done it, we'd love for you to subscribe to us on YouTube. Just press the like button if you're watching the stream this evening. It helps the YouTube robots recommend TSP to other Saints fans who might enjoy the little therapy sessions that we do each week. And if you're listening to the show as an audio podcast, the same applies there. Pressing that follow button on your podcast app of choice, because as you know, with these things, we're at the mercy of the algorithms and the bots and whatever else is going on. So give us a like, give us a share, and we really do appreciate that. So thanks for your support this week. Right, on to
the Glen retirement plan, is it? So stop working.
Yeah, bring it on.
When we're all making millions from this.
Are these real people, or are these spot accounts?
I mean, you're asking the wrong person, but it's a fair comment. I don't know.
17,000 idiots. Fair play.
Cheers, Gerald Ratner. That'll go well.
It's the FA Cup I was going to say this weekend. It used to be the weekend, didn't it? Now it's on all bloody week, to be honest. It probably starts on Wednesday.
Starts Thursday, I think, doesn't it?
It doesn't finish till next Monday or Tuesday, I'm sure. But I'm still going to call it the FA Cup weekend. And it's a home game for us. 4th round against a fairly decent Championship opponent. So let's get the opposition view from Joe from the Turfcast podcast, who has sent us this little video message.
Robin here from Turfcast Podcast, just giving my thoughts out of next weekend's game, the upcoming weekend, obviously, between Burnley and Southampton, all the way down on that south coast at St Mary's in the FA Cup 4th round. Be honest with you, not really fussed about this game. I'm not going to sit here and say I want us to lose. That's not the case. Obviously, I would like us to win and progress in the FA Cup. But if we don't, am I going to lose any sleep over it? Definitely not. Am I even going to be in a mood that we've lost the match? Definitely not. And I'm sure you guys will feel the same as well. Obviously, you guys have got more important things going on at the minute. Obviously, with, unlikely, admittedly, but your bid in survival in the Premier League, obviously off the back of a decent result as well, to be fair. So, you might not feel that it's as unlikely at this stage. But, obviously you guys will be going into it with a bit of confidence. We will be going into it with, hopefully, a bit of confidence. We've still got a game to play yet, as I record this on Sunday night, between the games, because we're playing Oxford on Tuesday, which we should win, but we've already played them once this season, and that was, as you can imagine, a 0-0 draw, just like a lot of our games this season have been 0-0 draws. So, our form's a little bit weird, really, because we're unbeaten in, I think it's 17 games now, which is fantastic. We haven't lost since we lost against Millwall at the Den. We've only lost twice all season. And one of them games had a lot of mitigating circumstances around it, because we lost at Sunderland the week after, sort of like, well, in the middle of the transfer window, should I say, when we were just selling players left, right and centre, and we didn't know who was going to be at the club. And Sunderland are a good side. We found that out now. We didn't realise at the time how good they were going to be, to be fair. But they're a good side, and they've shown that, you know, they are probably going to be in the promotion picture come the end of the season. Whether they go up or not, that's a different debate. But yeah, so we've actually done well on that aspect. We're not losing games. But we're not winning as much as we need to as well. There's been too many draws. Off the top of my head, I haven't got the league table up in front of me. What I will do is I'll quickly get it up as I'm talking to you, just so I can quickly sort of like give you some stats and things like that. And a professional would have just done it without telling you that they're doing it, but. Yeah, obviously I'm not a professional. But yeah, we do currently sit third in the league. That much I did know. But we've had 13 draws. 13. It's not even the most in the league, to be fair. West Brom have had 14. But I think it's 10 of ours now on 0-0. And that's a third of the games. A third of the games. 33% of our games have finished 0-0. It's awful. Like in terms of a spectacle, it's awful. So yeah, don't be expecting a high scoring game. Don't be expecting too many goals. Having said that, the game that we played against Reading in the third round of the FA Cup, obviously the round before this, we made a lot of changes, especially to the entire team. I think we made 11 changes, if I'm honest with you. And you could see that the defence wasn't as good as you would expect, obviously. And I would presume we'll be making the same amount of changes on the weekend. I don't think we're going to be playing many of our first team squad, if any of them. I think you guys will probably do the same as well. So who knows? If it's going to go to form, it'll be under 2.5 goals and 1 goal will win it either way. But with us making a lot of changes, it's hard to see if that will be the case. But yeah, one thing, like I said, I think we can categorically say that will happen. Is Burnley will make 11 changes and we'll play what is practically a B-side in that game. We did the same at Reading, as I've said, and I think you guys will do the same as well. I don't think you guys will be playing a lot of your first teamers. Obviously, as I've said, you've got bigger fish to fry, as do we. So I think it's going to be a case of, you know, 2 B teams going against each other. And to be honest with you, despite that, I do think it'd be a good sort of like marker to see where we're at compared to a team struggling in the Premier League, because obviously we're at the top end, should I say, of the Championship. Not as high as some of us would like to be fair. But it'll be good to pit ourselves against a team struggling at the bottom end of the Premier League. So obviously that's where we want to be next season. We had an awful time there last season, so we can sympathise with everything you're going through. All right, we weren't as bad as what you've been so far this season, but last season was absolutely god awful. And funnily enough, the season before that was probably my favourite ever season following Burnley, and it was quickly followed by what is probably my worst ever season following Burnley. This season, yeah, we're just drawing too many games. We're clearly a good side. You know, we've only lost twice all season. That's the least in the Championship. Even Leeds have lost three times. But the difference between us and Leeds is they've won more games than us, 4 more games than us. So 3 more games than us. So it's poor in terms of the draws. It's poor in terms of spectacle. I'm not that bothered when it comes to Burnley about being known as an entertaining team. But I don't want to see more 0-0s. It's so bad. Like the weekend we drew 0-0, obviously, with Portsmouth, and we were awful. We just didn't really get going in an attacking sense. But teams can't score against us. Leeds have scored 60 times this season. We've already played them twice. They couldn't score against us in any of them games. So yeah, it's an imbalanced team. We're so good at the back, but not really good going forward. But the foundations are there, and obviously with the signing of Marcus Edwards, who could play against you lot, to be fair, he could be one of the ones that does feature against you guys. Isn't announced officially yet when I'm recording this. Fingers crossed by the time you guys put this out it is. But I believe his medical was today, and I believe everything went well. So fingers crossed he's there on Tuesday, and we might need him on Tuesday, never mind on Saturday against you. But yeah, a game I'm kind of looking forward to, in a sense of just seeing how we will, you know, be able to pitch ourselves against a struggling Premier League team. But not really one I'm overly bothered about, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's a shame to see you guys struggling so much. Fingers crossed you can turn it around and things like that and pull away from that bottom 3 in the Premier League. But yeah, I think it's going to be a case of the same 3 that went up are going to come back down, just like we did the season before, and just like I presume Leeds and whoever else goes up with Leeds, hopefully us, does again next season. I think the gap's getting too big. I know the season before that people will say, well, 3 teams all stayed up, fair enough. But I think now that the gap is just far too big, and something needs to change over the next few years to prevent it from getting even bigger. But yeah, fingers crossed for you guys, you can pull away from it. But yeah, I suspect if Burnley don't go up, we'll be speaking to you next season. Hopefully we don't, because that means we've gone up. But yeah, if we do go up, hope to speak to you next season in the Premier League.
Joe joining us there from the Turfcast podcast to give us his thoughts on Burnley season and also the game. There's lots to unpack there. Interesting, you saying that he had his best year following the club, followed by his worst. I think we can all probably agree with that. Alfie, I'm going to come straight to you because Joe was saying there that we're probably going to make wholesale changes for the game. And I don't think we will because we didn't last time and there's no need for us to this time either.
No, I agree with you. I believe we've got a full week until the next game after that. I might be wrong. I think it's a full week after. And, you know, Ivan Juric needs to win some games. Southampton Football Club need to win some games. So they're not going to turn down an opportunity to win at home. You know, I don't know what the ticket sales will be like or whatnot, but they've been really well supported this season. Every home Premier League game is sold out. Every away game, apart from Man United, which took a reduced allocation, is sold out, which is incredible. And, you know, there'll be people there for the cup as well. They've got to win. And to be fair, why not have an FA Cup run? You've been given a championship opponent in the 4th round. You never know who's going to come next. So I think that they will be giving everything they can to progress. Maybe there'll be 1 or 2 changes. You know, maybe Ramsdale, for example, will get a weekend off, given the fact that he looks to be struggling a little bit. So, you know, McCarthy comes in, and then maybe a couple of other younger lads in the team as well. Maybe Wellington gets a rest if he's still feeling it from the weekend. But I wouldn't imagine any more than a few changes. I think they'll go as strong as they feel they can for this one.
It's crazy, Glenn, that they're third in the championship. It's going to be an interesting benchmark for us, for sure. But I think, as Joe was kind of alluding to there, they're difficult to score against, but they don't score many going forward either.
Well, I mean, I'm surprised that Burnley fans are kind of happy with that. I mean, if you're like a yo-yo team, they're in the same sort of bracket as us, aren't they? When they're up and down and whatnot. I kind of feel that if you're in the championship, you've got a little bit of a duty to your fans, really, to be entertaining. You know, you should be scoring more goals in the championship. You've just had the most miserable season on earth, and you're now back down in the championship, and fans will have actually been looking forward to it. They'd have got about 3/4 of the way through last season, you know, a bit like we are now, and saying, well, I'm quite looking forward to being back in the championship because blah. But they're trying to get promoted by boring everybody to death.
5 0-0 draws in their last 7. 5,
including their own fans. I mean, you know, it's all very well being tight defensively, but most fans would rather see their team win 3-2 than nicking the odd 1-0 and drawing every other game 0-0. So, but I mean, I don't think their league form is really relevant. I mean, as the lad said, they made 10 changes for the last round of the cup. And looking at their fixtures, they've got a game in a couple of days before they play us. They've also got a midweek game straight after they play us, and then the following week they've got Preston. You know, sort of 3 days after that, which is one of their big sort of derby matches. So, the 4 games they've got coming up in the next sort of week and a bit, we're very much the lowest priority out of those 4. And with Scott Parker being the risk-averse guy that he obviously is, there's just absolutely no way he's going to risk his first-team players to start the game against us. There may be a few sort of like first-teamers on the bench, I would imagine. Depends how big their squad is. But, and I agree with Alfie. We will be more or less full strength. You know, it's Saturday for us, and I don't really see that yesterday's win has changed anything particularly. We're not suddenly going to save all our players for a winnable game at the weekend. I mean, we got Bournemouth the week after, so you know, I think it will do someone like Wellington more good to play another game than it will be to have another 2 weeks off. He's just had 6 weeks off, and they're all 6 months off, hadn't he? Since he got injured. So I think as long as he comes, you know, recovers from yesterday and gets through a few training sessions this week, then he plays. I don't really see the team being changed that much, and I think we'll go into it like we did against Swansea with the idea of putting it to bed and getting through to the next round. That will certainly be what Ivan Juric wants to do. He doesn't strike me as a manager who really cares about the sort of conventions of the English game, if you like, of resting players for the FA Cup.
Well, they were all in for training today, weren't they? He said after the win last night. He said, but they're being in the morning.
That was my favourite quote from the press conference. I just asked him, what did you say to the players, after that? And he went, I told them you've got training tomorrow morning, and just stopped talking. I thought, nice.
What a reward for a win.
But that's
to be honest, the players, having won a game, they should want to get back in.
Yeah,
they should want to get back in, and the debrief of the game isn't as horrific as. Can you imagine the next day? I mean, what was it? The game after when we lost 5? Was it 5-0 to Spurs, where they had 2 days off straight after that?
Yeah.
I'd have had them in at 7 o'clock the following morning to watch that crap. So they should have wanted to get back in after the game yesterday and debrief it. It's not exactly going to be a heavy session straight after a game, is it? But
no,
you should want to get back in for the morning and see your teammates and go through what you did well. So I mean, I'm looking forward to the game against Burnley, and the manager will certainly be okay. I want 2 wins in a row, and then obviously Bournemouth have been ridiculously good. But they're not without issues. They've got a lot of injuries at the moment, so we've got to go into beat Burnley and then go into that game against Bournemouth thinking we can get something out of that as well.
Same for you, is it, Steve? I mean, on paper, it's a decent game, isn't it? Home, 4th round, Championship opposition.
Yeah, I mean, I think most fans like a cup run, don't they? So other than having to shell out for extra tickets and stuff, but yeah, you always want to progress in these cup competitions, especially when you're playing against when you get the luck of the draw and you're drawn at home against teams in divisions below you. You don't want to be. I mean, it wouldn't be that much of a giant killing given the way that as the lad mentioned that we've kind of been swapping places the last couple of years.
Yeah,
wouldn't be a huge giant killing if we lost it, but still you go into that, you kind of get that sort of record of, well, we got dumped out of the FA Cup by a team in the division below who made 11 changes, and it suddenly then doesn't reflect quite so well, and everyone gets a little bit annoyed about it. It's like, well, why did I bother paying 20 quid for the ticket for this if you're just going to toss it off against a B team?
Unusual turn of phrase, like Steve.
Yeah.
What are the ticket prices, by the way? Is it more?
It's 20 quid. Yeah, same as the 3rd round. I mean, I said at the time I thought they got the pricing massively wrong for Swansea, and the attendance, I think, probably backed that up.
Yeah.
And I personally, I'm expecting kind of about the same.
Although that was on the telly, wasn't it? That one as well. So
it was, and it was a Sunday.
And we've won a game. We've won a game.
Yeah,
so
I mean, perhaps
yesterday's
result might suddenly put another 1,500, 2,000 on the gate. Who knows? But yeah,
how can the club be happy with 20,000 empty seats, which is what they had at the last game?
Yeah,
12,000 gate, 20,000 empty seats. How can you be happy with that? And then and then we get another Championship side in the next round, and they put the same price in again. I don't get it. I really don't.
Yeah, and also obviously in the FA Cup, the club only gets 40% of the money anyway. So yeah, 40% of not much is still not much. Whereas if you price it sensibly and get 25,000 in, then actually those 25,000 are buying food and drink and merch and stuff, and the club gets all the money from that. So it's just weird commercial thinking.
Do both clubs have to agree? Do both clubs have to agree the pricing?
I would theoretically, but in practice, no. Basically, the home club decides what the prices are. They inform the away team. The away team, if they're absolutely not happy, can go to the FA and say, "Can you get involved here?" But basically, they don't bother.
Steve, do we know if Spurs did that when Tamworth charged like 45 quid for?
No, they didn't.
Complain.
No, I mean they just took it as a look. We've only got 600 tickets, so actually our fans will be quite happy to pay 45 quid for this.
Fair enough.
Because it's a complete novelty. I mean, the ones who I thought might complain would be Leicester, who are at Old Trafford again. And I think they're being charged 60 quid.
That is outrageous. That's so bad.
And I mean that's the sort of ticket pricing where clubs should be taking a stand. But ultimately, Leicester are a relatively unique case in that obviously everybody knows that they're dancing on the dotted line as far as PSR regulations are concerned. So getting 40% of a 60 quid a pop sellout at Old Trafford is probably in their own interests. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, as I say, you look at the attendance for the Swansea game. What was it, 12,500?
Yeah.
That tells you whether the ticket pricing was correct or not. I mean, the answer is no. And for them to have stuck with it for a game actually that might even be less attractive, given that everybody can see a league table and see the opposition's results as they've happened over the course of the season. Everyone knows that Burnley have drawn 10 games 0-0 this season. They know it's not going to be a thriller unless we find a way to break down their second 11. Which we might do. I mean, it might be that we do go really strong again, and just tear them to bits. In which case, yeah, happy days. Everyone's enjoying it, and yeah, we then move on to Bournemouth, sort of quite optimistically. But yeah, it could well be just one of those games where Parker ball takes full effect, and everyone just falls asleep in their seats.
Well, do you remember when Ivan Juric was hired, Steve? We had a look at Torino's results, and like in their last two Serie A seasons under Ivan Juric, they drawn about 20 of their games 0-0 as well. So if there's ever a 0-0 to predict, then this is probably the one.
I'll be honest with you, I haven't bought my ticket yet, and you haven't done much to convince me. I need to go, so I might sit this one out.
We won yesterday, Martin. What more incentive?
That's true. I want to talk about transfer deadline day before we finish. Alfie, you expecting a quiet day tomorrow? Is it going to be a busy day? What time are you running a live blog?
Yeah, we run a live blog from midnight tonight until midnight tomorrow, effectively. I spoke to the club, obviously, before the game on Saturday, and the verdict was, yeah, it probably will be a fairly quiet one. Obviously, they have got that Premier League loan slot available. So I guess if something comes up, they could use it. But I suppose nothing they do is going to be free. They've made a bid for this Abubakar Silla. I may have butchered his name. I do apologise. The loanee from Strasbourg, which they hope will be done. I mean, it's not done by any means. I think, to be fair to Fabrizio Romano, I think he broke that sort of within minutes of them making the offer. So clearly there's a bit of agent work there to try and raise the profile of that signing. But they hope to get that done off the back of a couple of injuries, I guess, to their centre-backs, and they feel they need a bit of depth. So there's always something that could happen. If something comes available, then, you know, it'll be interesting. But there probably, maybe it's the outs, the departures that are slightly more prevalent. We'll see what happens.
And the Sam Amo rumor today, or by the way, we're recording this on a Sunday night, so by the time you get around to listening to this, he may well have gone. But I didn't see that coming necessarily. What about you?
No, I saw a loan coming for sure this year. But I mean, I guess the one thing to say about that is that he is out of contract next summer. So if you send him out on loan to a championship team or whatever, and he comes back and he doesn't have any interest in signing a new deal. I'm not saying he does or doesn't, I don't know. But if he doesn't have an interest in a new deal, then you are under pressure to sell him then. You're under pressure to make something happen. Kind of similarly to how Jayden Magoma was sold to Brentford earlier this season. And I guess, you know, I'm told it's about 10 million euros total financial package. It's a really good profit at the end of the day. I mean, on Magoma and Amo-Ameyaw, they've made about 20 million quid almost, if everything's paid up, for players who they bought for 1.5 million quid 2 years ago when they were 16. So, I mean, on business, it's really good. And I know Steve and Glen will have their own opinions, as will every fan. I've watched a lot of Sam Amo for the 21s, and I think he's a really good player. He's a really nice kid. And I feel that in every chance he's had for the first team, he's done really well. You know, he's obviously scored a goal against the Cardiff B team, but it also in Premier League games, he's come on and made a small impact in the 5 or 10 minutes he's had. He's only 18 years old. So he's not ready for the Premier League right now, which is why he hasn't been playing, and that's probably fair enough. But it's just, I think it's a sad sort of state of affairs, and I don't know what's happened. But if it's a case of he's upset that he hasn't played enough, or people are telling him that he should play more, it's a shame because he's 18 years old. Liam Delap is 3 years older than him. It takes time for these players to mature and develop physically and technically. And I believe that he's going to be a really good player who's worth more than 10 million quid or 7 or 8 million quid. But yeah, if he wants to go, then I guess they don't have too much choice.
There's a lot of stuff, Glenn, that we will probably never know, about agents and parents and whether he thinks he should be getting more of an opportunity than he has. But whichever way you look at it, it's a talented player that's going to be leaving, and that's not a good sign.
No, it's a bit of a strange one, because I think everyone accepted that him going out on loan for the second half of the season would have been a good thing. I didn't realise this. So that's summer 2026. His contract,
Yeah.
I assume. So yeah, so he'd have another year. Yeah, are we that desperate for the money? It's a bit worrying if we are, because at the end of the day, it's not like someone's offered 30 million quid, is it? It's 7 million euros I saw. 10 million total, which is about 10 million total. That means that's before all the bits go to all the interested parties, isn't it? So yeah, it doesn't seem like a huge amount of money, but on the other side, I'm going to be balanced in my argument for once. If I throw a few names at you, Jimmy J. Morgan, Jaden Magoma, Cammy Doyle, they've all disappeared. They've all left the club and they've all done nothing, basically, at either Premier League level or Championship level. They've not done anything. So there's nothing to say that we're going to, at the moment, there's nothing to say we're going to miss any of those. And they wouldn't have been any use for us this season. Obviously, you can never tell what's going to happen 3 or 4 years down the line. But I think there is definitely a thing with a lot of young players do have a lot of voices in their ear, telling them they're better than they are, telling them they need to get away. I mean, I still think Saints have a reputation for a reason for being a good club to be at if you're a young player. And we've got a player from the academy. Yes, he's exceptional, but Sam Amo in this case should be aspiring to be as exceptional as Tyler Dibbling is. Yeah. And I just hope for
the academy as well. It's not the only one.
This is the thing, right? But I mean, these lads, and you mentioned obviously Jimmy J. Morgan, Jaden Magoma, Cammy Doyle. They're 18 years old, and we've got this because of exceptional cases like Tyler, and obviously players of the past who do come in and make an impact at that age. That isn't normal. Technically they could be playing terms for 3 more years. They shouldn't be. So players are going to develop at the age of 20, 21, 22. And I think it's just a sad state of where we are at the academy that, for example, players like Harrison Miles, who joined Man City when he was 15 years old this summer, one of the best academy prospects, really highly rated for the under-16s age group in England. And Saints had absolutely no power over what he did this summer because he was on an early scholarship, and that's not a real professional binding contract. So at the end of that scholarship, they can go anywhere for free. And he did. They agreed a fee in a tribunal and whatnot, but they didn't have any power to stop him. If you get through that stage, you then get to the player, they sign their first professional deal at 17. We're now getting to the point where by the time that professional deal comes to an end when they're 18 or 19, they haven't yet made it into the first team because they're 18 or 19, but they've already done enough in the academy game that now bigger clubs want them. So it's really difficult for clubs like Southampton to keep players from first that 16-year-old age group and then get them actually to sign that contract when they're 19 to stay until they're 22, 23. And it's worrying because, obviously Brexit has affected it. All the bigger clubs now hoovering up all these young talents, and who's going to be left for clubs like Southampton? Very few.
Yeah, it's a problem, but there's no will to change it. There's no will from the FA. It's like the Burnley lad was talking about closing the gap between the Championship and the Premier League. There's no will to do it. I've got this pet theory that there will be a will to change PSR rules because the bigger clubs are now not able to spend money. Manchester United haven't got any money, and that makes the world go round. Manchester United, for example, signing players, that makes the world go round. It makes Fabrizio Romano's world go round. It makes the agents' world go round. So that's the sort of thing that I can see changing. But what happens at the lower levels and academy levels, I don't think anyone gives a rat's about, to be honest. Certainly not for clubs like Saints. But it's always been the case that, we can't sit here and say it's, oh, woe is us. We've taken players off of Plymouth. We've taken we nicked Theo Walcott years ago from Swindon, I think it was.
And the player in question, Sam Amo from Spurs, when he was 16, for a bargain price.
That was the what was his name? Shields, wasn't it? Joe Shields. He was involved in that one. So he came at the same time as Jaden McGomert, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
So these young players have obviously got it in them to do this sort of thing under advice from someone else. And I think this is just what's happening here. And you just hope for the lad's sake that if he does want to go, that he doesn't just like lose valuable opportunities in his career because he's jumped too soon. But there is a world of difference between having flashes in games and doing well, like Sam Amo has. There's a world of difference between having flashes in games to being a Premier or a Premier League or a Championship footballer who can play 90 minutes every week. There's a world of difference between that, and the club obviously don't think he's ready to do that yet, and he or his advisors obviously think he is. So so that's how you end up in the situation that we're in now.
Well, I would recommend following Alfie on social media just for tomorrow, if nothing else, because it's going to be a busy day and he'll be all over it. You also get some pretty fun updates about away trips and cars breaking down and stuff. So good luck with that tomorrow. You can follow Total Saints Podcast as well on all the social media platforms. Just have a search for @Total Saints Pod. You'll find us on there. You can check out the merch store as well. We've got a shop. There's loads of things on there. It's shop.totalsaints.co.uk. As I mentioned right back at the start, you'll also find us on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. You head to patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. It's all explained on there. Each of the tiers comes with some different perks. There's weekly shouts for patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tiers. So thank you to Dave Melton, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer and James Kibbe. They're all in our Francis Benali tier. And also thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Hingston, the Wilton Massive. Thanks, Nick, for getting in touch. Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, Mark Littlewood, Mike Etheridge, James Bobin, John Bevan, and Liam Dempsey, who are all in our Mick Shannon tier. A huge thank you to Paul Castle Associates and everyone at Steamtown Brewery for sponsoring TSP this season. Thank you to Steve and to Glen and also to Alfie. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will see you again next Sunday evening at 7 o'clock.